Welcome to the Prepped and Polished Podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education, featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host.
Hi everyone, welcome to another tutoring tips episode of Prepped and Polished Podcast. This is Aaron of Prepped and Polished. Please be sure to check out our website at www.preppedandpolished.com. For tutoring in person or online, call us at 781-753-9951 or chat with us instantly on our website. You can also join our Prepped and Polished community on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Prepped and Polished. If you have a question after the show, please ask us a question on the chat feature on our website. We love hearing from you. Now, let's get right into episode number 245, what top scorers on the SSAT and ISEE share in common. Today we're going to be talking about what do top scorers of the SSAT and ISEE share in common. Now, this is going to be covering a wide range of levels and abilities for each student. As you've seen or heard probably in our other podcasts, there are different levels to both the SSAT and ISEE that we have to keep in mind. However, thinking about each level of the ISEE and SSAT, there are some traits that between each test, between each level, that students do share in common. We're going to go over 5 of these. The first one is a student who is taking the ISEE and SSAT and scoring well is very organized and has a very particular level of comprehension for the timeline that they have. Most students who are taking the SSAT and ISEE know how much time they have in front of them. If they are high scorers, they know that they're looking at top-rated schools. So they know when they have to take the test, when they have to submit their scores, and when makes the most logical time or logical sense for timing for them to take it. In the past, we've worked with students who come in over the summer. They say, I know that my test dates are in November and in December, for example, for the ISEE, or an SSAT student who's taking it in October, November, and December in preparation for the January application deadline. Having a student who is organized allows there to be a lot of work done for the student rather than the tutor having to help them organize their thoughts along the way. We of course do that with our students who aren't necessarily as organized, but a student who comes along and is very already organized, knows exactly what's on the test or has had previous experience, that helps a lot with developing a specific and concentrated timeline leading into the test. Another thing that students who have top scores on the ISEE and SSAT share in common is that they have a willingness to learn. There is a lot of content to be considering for each of these tests, specifically math and the verbal. If we have a student who is ecstatic about learning vocabulary or is intrigued or finds that math is his or her best subject, this typically, again, shows that there's a large range of ability and also depth that a student can learn to prepare for those easy questions, but also those 1 in a million really challenging questions. A lot of times students who come in who have that willingness to learn, who want to learn that content knowledge, we can go into some aspects. For example, an 8th grader, we can talk about trigonometric identities. Or have a 6th grader who's learning about geometry and Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 content. This would enable them to take on the test where if they are, let's say, in 8th grade applying to 9th grade, they might have an edge than a 9th or 10th grader applying for the same grade or grade above. Piggybacking off of this willingness to learn is also having goals and determination. Now, I kind of mentioned this within an organization, but if a student is aiming for top-notch schools, sometimes that determination to do well and achieve certain goals, that driving component can really make or break the difference for a student versus someone who is, I am just taking this because my parents want me to take it. Now, I know some students feel that way and still do well in the test, but having that determination, that drive, is really helpful to push the student toward learning new concepts, implementing strategies that we talk about in our sessions, and obviously performing well on the test. Now, I gave a little bit of preview for this next point, but there are a lot of strategies that students who are scoring high all share in common. And this deals with either approach to certain questions, process of elimination, time management, or simply just recognition of certain topics. I don't know how many times I've had to go over with students on how best to approach a word in the verbal section that they've never seen before, playing off of certain ideas such as prefixes, suffixes, roots, similar words, if the student is studying Latin or has a foreign language under their belt. There are so many strategies that can help with the verbal, as well as in the reading in terms of active reading and math in terms of certain process of eliminations and formulas to memorize, that a student can learn, and if they're willing to learn, they can really improve their chances of doing well in the test simply from a standpoint of just how they approach it. Now, my final point of what top scorers share in common for both the ISEE and SSAT is probably the most important: practice and studying. If a student comes in with the willingness to learn, they're organized, they have goals, and they're ready to implement strategies, all of it will go to the wayside if they don't practice and study. Many times when we have students come to us, they have either had experience with previous tutors or they've taken the test before, but that's it. They studied for a little bit, they took the test, and now they want to take it again. If a student comes in saying, listen, I have practiced every single day, or maybe every other day over the summer, or I've taken a couple practice tests, I've done some study guides, I've been learning words on the in the off season, and I need more. A student who's coming and practicing, studying all this stuff, and even during tutoring, learning and practicing, those are the students who are going to be exposed to more content, more types of questions, and will be better prepared for when the test comes. A lot of times when a student comes in having never taken a test and wants to take the first SSAT or ISEE test cold turkey, it's a bit terrifying. So if we can just help them build up that confidence, it ends up benefiting them in the long run. If a student is already aware, self-aware, that's going to make a big difference when it comes to the test and when it comes to their scores coming back. Now, organization, timeline, willingness to learn and content knowledge, goal-oriented and determination, strategies, practice/studying. These are some of what many test takers who take the ISEE and SAT who are top scorers share in common. However, if you are a student who wants to get to this level and you're having some challenges, or you're a parent and you know your son or daughter is struggling getting to that point, please feel free to contact us at Prepped and Polished. We'd be happy to have a consultation, discuss options for your student, and figure out what is the best route for them to try and get them to their desired scores. This wraps up our show, episode number 245, what top scorers on the SSAT and ISEE share in common. Please be on the lookout for our next podcast episode, number 246. Thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.